On Halloween night in 2002, 38-year-old Tina Mayberry stepped out of Gipson's restaurant in Douglasville, Georgia, where she'd been attending a Halloween party dressed as Betty Boop. Moments later, she staggered back into the bar, bleeding from stab wounds and seeking help. Despite frantic efforts of partygoers and the paramedics, she died a short time later at an Atlanta hospital. She had neither been robbed nor sexually molested. There was no apparent motive, no clues, no suspect. In March 2003, 16-year-old Amanda Greenwell disappeared. Her badly decomposed body was discovered a month later, stabbed, and her neck broken. Again, no motive, no clues, no suspect. According to James Allen Fox and Jack Levin in their book The Will to Kill, one of the most striking and intriguing aspects of serial murderers is the nature of their motivation. Although it has been loosely described as motiveless, there is indeed one to satisfy an intense appetite for power and sadism. The serial murderer tends to kill not for love, money, or revenge, but just for the fun of it because it makes them feel good. Then, on April 15, 2004, Patrice Andres showed up at her beauty salon like any other day. As usual, she was upbeat and smiling and joking with the customers. She had left a love note on her husband's car that morning that read, "The best is yet to come." The mother of a 16-year-old boy from a previous relationship, Patrice was totally devoted to her husband and son. When a customer arrived for her noon appointment, Patrice's salon, Tambour's Trim and Tan, was empty. The front door was unlocked, her purse and keys were on her desk, her lunch was in the microwave, and her car was out in front, parked at an odd angle. But the cash drawer was empty. Patrice had disappeared without a trace. Andre's past had been a tough one, including a substantial drug history. According to the Atlanta Journal and Constitution, she'd worked long and hard to quit messing with drugs and turn her life around. She'd gone back to school to learn the beauty trade, opened her own hair and tanning salon, married Rob Andres, and the two had plans to buy a bed and breakfast in Flagler, Florida. Life was good. Over the protests of her family and friends, who say she was happier than she had ever been, police could find no motive for anyone to do anything to Patrice. They became convinced she had run off. But Patrice's husband Rob knew better. Rob held a series of car washes to fund a reward for her safe return, which eventually netted $17,000. He plastered the town with posters with Patrice's photo, and the police station was flooded with over 700 leads. Air and ground searches revealed nothing. Rob worked tirelessly for months, searching for his bride. A witness said she saw a man in a white cargo van blocking the entrance to Patrice's salon on the morning she disappeared. Community-wide searches went on from Coal Mountain all the way to Matt. But community energy like that is hard to sustain, and around Christmas, the posters began to come down, along with the reward fund collection boxes. There were still no clues. Not a single lead had panned out. This was not the first time a woman had gone missing in a grisly tale of terror. Rob Andres had no idea that his wife's disappearance was just the latest in a long string of murders, which had begun a decade earlier. In Baxter Springs, Kansas, 20-year-old Jennifer Judd was stabbed to death with a knife in the kitchen of her own home on May 11, 1992. Justin Judd, her husband of only 10 days, found her body. Her keys were on the living room floor, and the lunch she had packed to take to him was on the front seat of the car. At that state of the forensics art, there were no clues left at the crime scene. There was no apparent motive and no suspects. On June 28, 2004, a decomposed torso of a young prostitute was found near Wright City, Missouri. Passers-by told investigators that they saw a white utility van at the rest stop off Interstate 70 near where the torso was found. The unidentified woman was buried during a ceremony complete with flowers, prayer, and a few mourners who stood in place of the woman's unknown family members. And then, on September 18, 2004, family members found 45-year-old Lisa Nichols from Turnerville, Alabama, a divorced mother of 2 daughters, dead in her bathroom. She'd been raped, shot 3 times in the head, and set on fire. John Paul Chapman was a good-looking, charismatic guy living in a Douglasville, Georgia trailer park where he always found himself in trouble with the law. He fancied himself quite the ladies' man, but as with most alcoholics and addicts, his addiction always came first, and under the influence, he did some bad things. He'd been arrested for drugs, for indecent exposure, and for trespassing. His neighbors remembered him as being a scary kind of guy, paranoid from drugs and alcohol, always worried that the police were closing in on him. Every time he was arrested, his fingerprints were sent to the FBI, and they came back only as matches to his previous arrests in Georgia. This eventually proved to be a very costly error. One neighbor who played cards and drank regularly with Chapman mentioned once that prayer might help John with his problems. He even suggested that they pray together. It was a bad suggestion. Chapman flipped out, saying he couldn't handle prayer in his house. He was indeed a scary guy. Young Amanda Greenwell lived in and disappeared from the same trailer park. Nobody had any idea that John Paul Chapman was anything but a small-time druggie doing small-time crime, because the FBI's fingerprint database failed to confirm his true identity. Law enforcement lost an opportunity to prevent further criminal activity by this individual, the FBI later said in a statement, according to the Chicago Tribune. Law enforcement agencies across the country submit roughly 50,000 fingerprint comparison requests a day to the FBI system, which contains 45 million sets of prints. Given the size of the system, some errors are bound to occur, said the editor of the Journal of Forensic Identification. Like more than 80% of the fingerprints submitted to the database facility in West Virginia, Chapman's fingerprints were submitted as digital images. Sometimes the quality of these images can be a problem, leading to errors, either false identification, such as the implication of an Oregon lawyer in the Madrid train bombings in 2004, or, as in this case, the failure to correctly identify John Paul Chapman. Jeremy Bryan Jones lived in a middle-class home in Miami, Oklahoma, where his mother was a florist and his father a woodshop supervisor. He had trouble in high school and was transferred to school in Quapaw because of discipline problems in Miami. He went to school for a short time before dropping out. Jeremy Jones's first run-in with the law was in January of 1990 when he was 16 years old. He was charged with assaulting a boy, and when his mother came to his defense, Jones assaulted her as well, according to the Joplin Globe. One of Jones's high school classmates was Justin Judd, and Jones eventually lived next door to Judd for a while. Jones was a problem neighbor, according to Judd. "We called the police on him several times," Judd said. "You could hear his wife or girlfriend screaming all the time. The police would show up and she'd say, 'Nothing's wrong,' and the police would leave." In 1992, Justin Judd's bride, Jennifer, was murdered, stabbed to death in her own kitchen. Jones's first rape charge came on November 5, 1995. He was charged with rape a second time on January 10, 1996, along with the unlawful possession of meth. The following day, he held a loaded revolver to a woman's vagina and threatened to shoot her. He spent time at the Dick Connor Correctional Center in Hominy, Oklahoma, where he sobered up and felt bad about his drug-fueled crimes. On March 3, 1997, he pleaded guilty to 3 charges of sexual battery and received a 5-year sentence of probation. The 2 girlfriends he raped were afraid to testify. His court-mandated sex offender counseling sessions didn't go well, and he was ultimately kicked out. He flat-out ignored the 2 court-ordered requests for DNA samples. On October 19, 2000, a warrant was issued for his arrest for probable cause. His probation was being revoked. He sold his truck and hit the road with the proceeds. He left Oklahoma on the run. In Joplin, Missouri, Jones met the mother of a Missouri prison inmate. He was complaining of her that the system was out to get him, and she loaned him her son's identity, John Paul Chapman. He spent his time on a bus from Joplin to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, memorizing his new identity, complete with social security number and birth date. He drifted, working as a delivery driver, a construction worker, and whatever else he could find, from Oklahoma to Atlanta. A bounty hunter tracked him to Tuscaloosa, so he went to Mobile, Alabama, looking for work as a laborer, hoping to stay one step ahead of his past and earn some quick cash helping to rebuild in the aftermath of Hurricane Ivan. He found employment and lodging with an empathetic and religious home builder and his family. But walking the straight and narrow wasn't his style, and he soon found himself back on the street. His silver tongue and good looks soon found him fresh lodgings with another casual acquaintance in his family, but his presence made the wife very nervous. It wasn't long before he was kicked out again. One of his former roommates believes Jones had it in for women. He was always saying derogatory things about women, about putting them in their place, about smacking them down, she said. One of his favorite jokes was, "What do you tell a woman with 2 black eyes?" "Nothing. You done told the bitch twice." People either loved him or were repelled by him, yet his self-image remained untarnished. "I'm a likable guy," he said in a recent interview. "I'm the guy next door." But a former roommate saw his darker side. The monster came out when he was on meth. The monster seemed to be an increasingly larger part of his personality. According to Peter Vronsky in his book Serial Killers, The Method and Madness of Monsters, serial killers, although often described as monsters, rarely appear to be creatures with blood dripping from their fangs or crazed psychopaths babbling satanic rituals. While a few are exactly like that, many appear at first glance to be healthy, normal, and even attractive people. And that is precisely the problem with a serial killer. A victim rarely gets beyond the first glance. Others are simply invisibly unmemorable and unnoticeable until someone notices them killing. On Halloween in 2002, Jones went to Gipson's, a favorite bar in Douglasville, where a Halloween party was in full swing. Monsters other than those with plastic masks were apparently out that night, because at midnight, Tina Mayberry stumbled in from the parking lot and then died from her stab wounds. In September 2004, when family members found 45-year-old Lisa Nichols, a divorced mother of 2 daughters, dead in her bathroom, the community came alive to help solve the murder. Lisa had been raped, shot 3 times in the head, then set on fire. From the beginning, neighbors were helpful. One remembered seeing a vehicle parked outside Nichols' home. Another recalled part of the license tag number. Quickly, the evidence led police to a man named as Oklahoma. A man who employed Oklahoma as a laborer gave police his full name as he knew it, John Paul Chapman. He also provided authorities with a social security number and a birth date. Now, the police had a suspect. 4 days later, Detective Birch, the lead detective investigating Nichols' murder, got a call on his cell phone. It was John Paul Chapman. An incredulous Birch kept Chapman talking on the phone while his partner traced the call. They talked about this and that, even the weather. 20 minutes later, police surrounded the suspect, who was inside a house not far from where Nichols had been killed. He was still on the phone with Detective Birch. Police charged him with capital murder, rape, burglary, and kidnapping in Nichols' death. Police were happy to have him in custody, but the seriousness of the situation had yet to come to light. As a matter of procedure, Birch had Chapman's fingerprints run through the FBI's database, the Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System. This database holds more than 200 million sets of prints and is tapped more than 50,000 times each day by law enforcement agencies around the world. The AFIS data on John Paul Chapman came back naming the John Paul Chapman alias he'd been using, even though Jeremy Brian Jones's fingerprints had been in the system since 2000 when he skipped bail in Oklahoma. Obviously, the FBI later admitted, there was a glitch. This attempt was the 4th time the AFIS failed to match Jones's true identity to his original prints, a mistake that apparently had deadly consequences. Between October 2003 and June 2004, Jones, posing as John Paul Chapman, was arrested 3 times in Georgia on minor offenses. All 3 times, authorities sent his prints to the FBI, but the computer system never made a match. Had the match been made, local authorities said, Jones would have remained in jail. Instead, he was released, and police say he killed 4 more women. Catherine Collins, whose body was found in New Orleans on February 14, 2004. Amanda Greenwell, a 16-year-old Douglas County girl whose body was found in April 2004. Patrice Andres, a hairdresser who vanished on April 15, 2004, and Nichols, found in her Alabama home in September 2004. Jones was charged in the death of Collins, Greenwell, and Nichols. He remains a suspect in the Andres slaying. In response to queries by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the FBI admitted that a mistake occurred with its database and is now investigating the errors and making certain the database is working properly. If Jones had been arrested in Mobile on a minor offense like before, chances are they would have set him free to kill yet again. But this time, facing murder, rape, and other charges in the death of Lisa Nichols, the suspect was held without bond. Still naive about the true identity of the man they had in jail, detectives sent out a routine national teletype just in case Chapman was wanted in other states for other crimes. Missouri responded, saying they knew a John Paul Chapman with the same social security number and date of birth, but that man had been in their prison since 1999. They sent along a photograph of their inmate and a set of fingerprints. Neither one matched the man in custody in Mobile. For a week, police worked around the clock trying to figure out the puzzle. And then the suspect himself gave them a clue. John Paul Chapman made several telephone calls from the jail's payphone to a number in Miami, Oklahoma. The phone number belonged to Jean Beard. A Miami detective told the Mobile police that he knew Mrs. Beard and knew there were outstanding warrants for her son. His name? Jeremy Brian Jones. The Miami detective sent Jones's photos and fingerprints to Mobile, along with the outstanding warrants. This time, said Marvin Whitfield, a crime scene investigator with the Mobile County Sheriff's Office, the prints matched. Chapman was surprised, to say the least, when presented with the outstanding warrants for Jeremy Brian Jones and evidence of his duplicate identities. While awaiting trial for the rape and murder of Lisa Nichols, Jones confessed to killing as many as 8 women in metro Atlanta, including 5 prostitutes. He gave specific detailed confessions to police in private, but maintained his innocence in the presence of his mother and his girlfriend. He detailed the crimes, including the victims' names and the locations of the killings. Mobile Sheriff's Detective Paul Birch said Jones was very nonchalant and matter-of-fact in recounting the rapes and killings. The more Jones talked, the more the body count began to rise. By November, the count was up to 13 victims, 10 of which were women. Then 17. Then 21 in 5 states. Jones passed a polygraph where he talked of picking up prostitutes on stretches of Atlanta streets lined with strip clubs and dumping their bodies in wooded areas, and once off a bridge into a river. He even sketched a rough map of the locations where he committed crimes in Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Kansas that dated back to 1992. Investigators in Delaware County, Oklahoma, learned that Jones was responsible for the 1996 killings of Doris Harris, 41, and Daniel Oakley, 38, who were shot. The trailer they lived in was set on fire to obscure their murders. He also confessed to police that he had murdered 19-year-old Justin Hutchings of Pitcher, Oklahoma, in 1999. Jones killed Hutchings with a lethal injection, he told investigators. Jones had lots more to say. He bragged at one time that he could talk the panties off a nun. He thought of himself as a ladies' man and considered himself to have been born lucky until the meth got hold of him. He also mocked the authorities who arrested him 3 times in Georgia, failed to match his fingerprints, and set him free. Douglas County Sheriff Phil Miller said they were going to approach his confessions with cautious optimism. Jeremy Jones has confessed to the deaths of Tina Mayberry, Patrice Andres, and Amanda Greenwell, he said. There was some evidence to support the Greenwell confession, but almost no evidence to support the confessions in the Andres or Mayberry cases. On February 14, 2004, Catherine Collins, 45, was found stabbed to death in New Orleans. Jones has been charged in that killing. On December 30, 1999, Danny and Kathy Freeman of Welsh, Oklahoma, were shot to death, possibly to settle a drug debt. The killer set fire to their home. That same night, their 16-year-old daughter Ashley and her friend Laura Bible disappeared. Jones admitted to murdering the girls and said he threw their bodies down a mine shaft. Jones also admits stopping at Tamber's Trim and Tan Salon, high on meth and needing directions. When he found Patrice Andres, an attractive petite brunette, alone in the shop, he said he kidnapped, raped, and killed her, dumping her body off a bridge in Douglas County. After his capture, he seemed eager to talk to anyone who would talk with him, trading interviews and confessions for visits with his family and his girlfriend. Investigators from Oklahoma, Georgia, Louisiana, and California traveled to Mobile to talk with him. His court-appointed attorney, Habib Yazdi, dismissed all his confessions. He'll talk to anyone and confess to anything if they'll let him talk to his mother and his girlfriend for hours. He's getting fancy lunches with crab claws and dinners and drinks. Then he later says it's all false. Assistant DA John Furman said that the charismatic Jones was thriving on the national media attention, including segments on The Today Show, CNN, Fox News, and A Current Affair. Vicki Freeman, Jeremy Jones's girlfriend, continues to believe in him. She says that the police have it all wrong. He's a wonderful man, she said. He's caring, considerate, loving, gentle. Freeman, 14 years Jones's senior, met him in 2003 at the same bar where Tina Mayberry was stabbed. Jones approached her and told her she was beautiful. It was apparently love at first sight. But love with Jeremy Jones has a dark side, and Freeman admits that he'd been physically abusive, but that they always made up. She thinks that the police are piling all their old crimes on her lover, trying to clear their books of unsolved murders for brownie points. He's a low-rent Ted Bundy, ADA John Furman said in Mobile. Otherwise reasonably smart women somehow find him interesting. He doesn't look like a monster. Obviously, Vicki Freeman is playing with fire. She only knew him as John Paul Chapman until his arrest. She'd called the police on him at least twice, once when she was afraid for her life, after which she declined to press charges, and another time after he reportedly shot up 2 grams of meth and was trying to kill himself. When he and Freeman moved into an apartment together in September 2003, Jones chatted up the neighbors, attracted to their 18-year-old daughter. The police arrested him for exposing himself to the girl and repeatedly trying to enter her apartment after her parents had left for the day. Outside the daughter's bedroom window, the girl's parents found a box containing binoculars, rope, and tape. After Hurricane Ivan, Jones moved to Mobile to find construction work. "I wanted to come down here, live on the beach happily ever after," he said. He phoned Freeman to tell her that he'd found work. She was pleased at the news, told him to get a place for them to live, and she'd be down to join him. He made that phone call from Lisa Nichols' telephone. The next day, Lisa Nichols was dead, raped, shot, and set on fire. Jones has since denied that he killed anyone. In spite of his public confessions, he faults the FBI for failing to discover his true identity, and as a result, he's been labeled a serial killer. He even denies confessing to any killing. Prosecutors speculated this about-face was a prelude to an insanity defense. According to John Douglas in his book Journey into Darkness, serial killers and sexual predators do what they do not because they need to eat or to keep a family from starving, or even to support a drug habit. They do it because it feels good, because they want to, because it gives them satisfaction. You can make the argument that many of them are compensating for bad jobs, poor self-image, mistreatment by parents, any number of things, but that doesn't mean we're going to be able to rehabilitate them. My colleague, Greg McCrary, uses the analogy of a cake. You've baked this chocolate cake, which smells great and looks terrific, but as soon as you bite into it, you realize something is very wrong. Then you remember, oh yeah, in addition to the eggs and flour and butter and cocoa, I recall mixing in some axle grease from my workshop. That's the only problem with the cake, the axle grease. If I can just figure out a way to get the axle grease out of the cake, it will be perfectly fine to eat. This is the way I view rehabilitation of sexual predators, particularly serial sexual predators. The fact is that in the vast majority of cases, the urges, the desires, the character disorders that make them hurt and kill innocent men, women, and children are so deeply ingrained in the recipe of their makeup that there's no way to get out the axle grease. During the trial, Jones blamed Lisa Nichols' neighbor for her death, but he said in other statements that he killed Lisa and burned her body while high on methamphetamines. He said, "It was like a nightmare. I was in a movie. I was higher than I'd ever been in my whole life." Alabama Attorney General Troy King said Jones targeted his prey like any predator and never showed even an ounce of remorse. Lead prosecutor Assistant Alabama Attorney General William Dill called Jones a classic sociopath. He said Jones testified at length and talked about Nichols and her family, but never shed one tear. However, when he spoke about his own mother, he bawled. Defense attorney Greg Hughes sought a life sentence without parole, saying Jones suffered extreme mental and emotional problems, including long-term drug addiction. Jones was convicted on October 26, 2005, of rape, burglary, sexual abuse, and kidnapping during capital murder in the slaying of Lisa Nichols. A jury deliberated only 35 minutes before voting 10-2 for Jeremy Bryan Jones to be put to death. Circuit Judge Charles Graddick, not bound by that recommendation, called Jeremy Bryan Jones a danger to civilized society as he sentenced him to die by lethal injection. Jones told the court, "God will have the final say," before Graddick sentenced him. An appeal is automatic. Jones contends his confessions in the Nichols killing and others were just lies to get extra jail privileges like phone calls to family and meals. He vows to beat his case on appeal. He is yet to face charges in Georgia for the March 2004 killing of 16-year-old Amanda Greenwell of Douglas County. "One day I'll be a free man," Jones said. "I'll write me a book and laugh my ass off."